often say, I just want to be free. But is freedom truly the same as happiness? Tonight's story is about a young girl who sets free a bird she just brought home. But the bird had already lost its strength to fly. When it finally spread its wings again, it looked up at the sky as if remembering, but fell to the ground instead. This is a quiet tale that invites us to reflect. What does it really mean to be free? Freedom by Mimei Ogawa. As I passed by a bird shop in a town, I noticed a bird in a cage. I didn't know what kind of bird it was, but it was larger than a typical songbird, shaped almost like a small dove. It sat there, motionless, as if the tiny cage made it difficult even to breathe. Its beak was yellow, its body heavy and slow. Its round black eyes seemed always alert, filled with nervous caution. Something about it made me feel tender toward it. I didn't dislike the bird at all. How can it move at all in such a small cage? I thought of the larger, empty bird cage I had at home. Without much hesitation, I asked the woman at the shop how much it cost. She stepped out to speak with me. The price wasn't exactly low, but once I had decided to buy the bird, a small difference in price didn't matter anymore. I just really wanted it. It reminded me of something. When I was a child, I used to carry decoy cages into the woods at the edge of my village or into the graveyards near the old temple. I would try to catch birds like siskins or titmice. The memory brought back the fresh scent of soil and the cool wind weaving through the trees. It stirred something in me, a way of life I had long forgotten. And suddenly, my whole body felt alive again. Can I really leave it in such a tiny cage? This bird's cage is a bit too small, the shopkeeper's wife said. It would be better to give it a larger one. Then why? Why didn't she do so? Because the bird can't speak. It simply eats its food. It lives on in silence. Watching it, you might think it was content. But maybe it only looks that way because it cannot complain. I brought the bird home in a paper bag, and I gently placed it into the larger cage. It looked even more anxious now, startled by the unfamiliar surroundings. This bird seems terribly timid. As I peered at it more closely, I noticed something unsettling. Its tail, which should have been long, had been cut short. Oh, they must have trimmed it to fit inside the smaller cage. That thought gave me an eerie discomfort. Who did that? What kind of person would do such a thing? It was cruel, trying to reshape a living creature just to make it more convenient, to force it into something smaller. That coldness, I couldn't help but feel disturbed. A few days later, I learned the name of the bird, an ikaruga. It belongs to the dove family and is known for its strong wings. A bird built to soar freely across the open sky. To keep a bird like that in a cage, it just doesn't feel right. The thought stayed with me, and every time I looked at the bird, my conscience ached. Maybe I should set it free. But then I hesitated. With its tail cut so short, can it even fly well? And its wingtips worn down from the cramped cage. I imagined a cat catching it the moment it left. Maybe it was safer here, even in captivity. Winter passed. Spring approached. Migratory birds began calling out in the sky, flying past in flocks. The Ikaruga watched them from behind the bamboo bars. It stretched its neck, peering through the slats, quietly following the shadows overhead. It looked as if it were saying, I too once flew across the sky, free, like them. Then it stopped moving. It perched silently, growing gloomy. To keep this bird in a cage any longer would be a sin. So I opened the little door. Go on now. Fly away. The bird hesitated. It moved back and forth, as if suspicious of everything. It didn't try to leave right away. Snow still crowns the mountain peaks. The rivers below run clear. Fly there, to the distant mountains, to freedom. I reached inside, gently urging it out. The Ikaruga hopped to the cage's entrance. Then, suddenly, it burst into the open. But its tail was still too short, its wings frayed. It couldn't fly like it once did. It tried to land on a branch in the garden, but fell to the ground. Its legs, they didn't move properly either. Yet, realizing that freedom, the thing it had longed for, was finally within reach, the little bird began flapping with all its might. At last, it lifted into the sky, circling above the yard once, then aiming for a tall tree in the distance, beating the air with its damaged wings, carving its way through the fading light. I imagined it, a prisoner locked away for 10, 20 years, suddenly released into the bright, open world, into a city flooded with sunlight. I pictured them standing beneath iron-barred windows, raising their thin arms high toward the sky. Give me liberty, or give me death. It was as if I could hear their voices, clear and unwavering. Soon evening began to fall. Where had the bird gone? I thought surely it wouldn't let itself be caught again. Never again. And yet, the one who escaped was just a single bird. Back at the bird shop and in countless homes, many more birds still sit in cages, cramped, unable to stretch their wings. Yet all of them long for the vast sky. Still, no one thought about setting them free. People simply enjoyed their singing. Even when it comes to birds, what right do we really have? And yet we humans, we confine each other too. We strip each other of freedom. We throw one another into prisons. We live in contradiction. But unless we feel that contradiction, unless we question it, we'll never seek to change the world that made it. The city sparkled as usual, lit by its familiar lights. People laughed. They rejoiced. But I felt heavy. Alone, I stood beneath the darkening sky, gazing at the tall trees swaying above me. I pictured the sorrowful little bird, how it had rushed toward freedom, how it must have felt that if it didn't go now, it might never go at all. Afterward, there was a time not so long ago when only the powerful and the wealthy were granted freedom. Today, the chance to be free is open to anyone, and that in itself is something truly wonderful. But at the same time, freedom means having to choose. It means being exposed to pressure, responsibility, and constant competition. The bird in our story, his tail clipped, his wings worn thin. For that creature, freedom was no longer a salvation. It had become a burden, a trial. It's only natural for us to wish for freedom. But perhaps for those without the strength or the spirit to withstand it, freedom brings more pain than peace. So then, what became of the bird after it flew away? Was it caught by a cat? Or perhaps found by someone who offered it safety at the cost of its freedom? And if you were that bird, in that very moment, how would you choose to live? If you found this tale enjoyable, subscribing to the channel and leaving a like would greatly encourage this old storyteller. You have done well today. Rest easy and sleep well. Good night.